Okay, this is the Balinese water temples and the politics of simulation. I'm interested in this particular topic because of my background. I come from a background of science, complexity, and computer simulation. And I wanted to understand how relevant complexity is to anthropology. And one way to do that is to look at this particular instance in which a controversy arose around making computer simulations of a particular cultural institution. So let me get you guys in context. This is about the island of Bali, located in Indonesia here, very close to the island of Java. A satellite photo of the island of Bali. It has one city, the city of Denpasar. It has a population of 4 million people, and its area is 50% larger than the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, just for reference. It has 8 regencies and one city, Denpasar. Its main industry is tourism, constituting 80% of the economic activities of the island. But the main source of employment continues to be the traditional wet rice agriculture. This island has been strongly influenced by Indian and Chinese culture and Hindu religion for 2,000 years. Now, the cultural institution of focus today is the Subak irrigation system. This is a cultural religious institution that has been working for more than 1,000 years. It is a traditional, ecologically sustainable and cooperative method of management of water for irrigation of the traditional wet rice agricultural fields. It consists of 5 terraced wet rice fields and their water temples, and they cover an area larger than Washington, D.C., just larger than that. It consists of 2,000 water collectives or cooperatives in which 50 to 400 farmers are collaborating in managing one water source. This irrigation system in later years has been getting a lot of pressure from the large-scale tourism industry, and in more recent years it has attained protection from the government, the law, and the UNESCO being recognized as a World Heritage Site. A couple of pictures of the irrigation system. What you are looking at here are the wet rice plantations here. This is a system of water canals and weirs. It is fairly extensive, and here's the main water temple, which is the priest of this temple is in charge of managing the irrigation schedules. Now, the priests have one part in the development of these schedules, and it has been argued for years that the religious rituals have a lot to do in determining the decisions of each subak in the calendar for the irrigation seasons. So, for 50 years now, there has been this big industrial revolution of agriculture all across Asia. In the particular case of Bali, it has been leading farmers to abandon their traditional rice agriculture and substituting it for high-yielding varieties of rice. The natural rice, or what we would call organic rice, has been being replaced by pesticides and fertilizers, and high-intensity farming in contrast to what was traditional, which was the irrigation schedule, as I just mentioned. And the authority of the local water temple priests have been substituted by engineers, agricultural engineers and politicians. So naturally, arguably in all of Asia, people can see that there has been an economical benefit to all this big transition, this big revolution. But in the island of Bali, something very different has happened, which is pests have been surging for many years, and water shortages they erupted at the time. So as part of the focus on this problem, anthropologist Stefan Lansing, of whom we have been talking a lot this semester, and systems psychologist James Kramer, they developed a series of simulations of the Subak system of irrigation. So these kind of simulations, they capture the spatial features of Bali rice agriculture, they reproduce the space, and they reproduce also the patterns of rainfall, of water pressures, etc. And they study multiple possible scenarios for the management of water and irrigation, and multiple scenarios for pests, for harvesting schedules, etc. These simulations, what they try to do is to show what would the outcome be if we change these kinds of regimes. Now, what these simulations attain, and these simulations were published 25 years ago, they demonstrated how sustainable the traditional wet rice agriculture system has been for so many years. So they demonstrate that fact, and they demonstrate how it is more beneficial for the locals than the high-intensity industrial system that was being implanted by politicians. So here's just a little figure representing how the simulation is behaving on space. Now, this set of simulations were one of the tools that contributed to the big change, the big political change in Bali, in which the government finally allowed the local farmers to continue the traditional system of agriculture. And in later years, this system became protected by the government and recognized as part of the cultural heritage by UNESCO. So today it is protected, but still today it is under the pressure of industrialized tourism. Now, in 1999, Stefan Helmreich, he wrote this extensive critique of the approach taken by Stefan Lansing. How am I with time?
Good.
I'm good with time, okay. So his critique, after what I mentioned, his critique says that the simulations, the computer simulations, oversimplify history and the power relations between, for example, the farmers and the priests, or the farmers and the bureaucrats, etc. The modules may obscure or ignore factors of social systems, and for example, this kind of research, while as shown by Lansing himself, it was probably beneficial, it could be misused by anyone to perpetuate the neo-colonial relationships between the Bali farmers and any capitalist polities and agency, even international ones. So in his deconstruction, for example, he contextualizes the problem that the Green Revolution was an international agricultural strategy, and it was designed, for example, with the apparently beneficial purpose of averting famine, but at the same time it turned the traditional farmers into consumers of industrial fertilizers and later pesticides, because with the industrial fertilizers and the high-intensity agriculture, the pests emerged. They really rised in comparison with how it was in the traditional system. So they also became consumers of pesticides, and obviously they saw themselves in the obligation of selling their rice. So there was this importation of Western technology for agriculture, and it was shown that this technology, it has promoted pollution, and it has promoted the productization of the farmers. And obviously the increased inequality by concentrating health by the traders and people who were already rich. Now, the simulation tool, it's a didactic tool to convince otherwise acceptable engineers, bankers, development officials that, well, traditional agriculture is feasible, and in Lansing's own words, it was a system of wisdom that was evolutionary and also a biological wisdom. However, the computer that was used in the first place to create the simulations, and later the computer that was taken to the priests, to the farmers, to the bureaucrats, to show them how the simulation was favoring the traditional agriculture, well, it is associated with the Western modernity, the Western values of consumerism, of technology, and naturally the very computer became a symbol that clashed with the subject reality that it was purported to favor, which was the tradition of this agriculture. So Helmreich also was arguing that despite of his reputation and his good intention, well, Lansing simulations, they certainly ignore important human agencies that have shaped the politics of the irrigation system, might shape the reception of the simulations themselves. Now, this has to do, for example, with what I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that the simulations ignore the power play between all the actors. Also, Lansing separates modern farming and traditional farming, and in our minds as a Western culture, we think that a traditional farming is all organic and it's all free of political entanglement. It's all free, it's innocent, free of political processes, economical processes, etc. Also, Lansing writes, the Balinese, one might say, have a biological view of time in contrast to an industrial one. So what Helmreich argues is that in this paradigm of, or if we were to assume a unilinear evolution paradigm, the non-West would be posed as immature in need of a paternalistic guidance that only we, the Westerners, can provide. So, in Lansing's response to Helmreich, he was naturally arguing for his own work. Why involve this kind of apparatus, mathematical apparatus, computer simulation, and all of this complexity in the study of a social institution? In the first place, because the irrigation system is really complex, and the timing that all the subacts take, we cannot make any sense of them. They are really complicated from one to the next one. So it is a tool that it's really the only one that can help us make sense of the problem. But it is a tool. It is not. It was never purported as a replacement by him. And it also shows that a bottom-up approach is feasible because it is taken from the point of view of the individual farmer and the individual subak, and then goes up from there. What Lansing showed is that not even the authority of the priest was really needed in the first place, according to his simulations. While Helmreich, one of the critiques that he had is that it was a tool to assert the priest's authority over the farmers. So I think that this is high for you today, and I hope it was interesting to you. The questions?
Well, I do. No, you go.
Just the use of simulations, is it because, it's necessary? Isn't it because once you have more than like two variables, it becomes a much more harder system to kind of determine? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to remember my...
The only thing I don't understand, Fabio,
yes,
is Lansing's thought that although this is a quite complex system, the regulatory authority of what we in archaeology call the ritual functionaries wasn't needed.
Yes.
How did he conclude that?
Actually, he concluded that, and that's one of the features of simulation that I am yet to study better. But his approach was that in that particular conclusion was taken from the following. He just, in his simulation, he studied how a subak, his management of irrigation and its own calendar for irrigation would only depend on the neighboring cooperatives, the neighboring subaks. For example, it would be neighboring bodies of water. So his simulation only was concerned with them, and the simulation did not involve the priest of the water temple. So it was a remarkable result that he was able to reproduce the behavior of the subaks. But there is a very important factor in there, that the subaks, they already had their irrigation calendar in accordance with the religious system. This is part of the argument that I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, that the priests and the religious system, which is a system of equilibrium with earth, a system that promotes equilibrium of people with earth, promotes irrigation that's respectful to the environment. So a subak looks at the neighboring subaks and would not want to overuse the water. So the religious system is not in the simulation, is not on the head of the priest. The religious system is in the subak and the neighboring subaks. So that's why Lansing completely excluded the priests, but did not exclude religion from the system.
How did Lansing figure that out?
Well, he actually posed that as a research question, right? That's what happened.
He watched?
And no, he did. Well, yes, it was. It has been documented how the subaks behave, right? Now, the simulation, but it is not the observation, because in the observation, obviously, when you go, you obviously see that the farmers have relationships with the priest. Is that correct? But the point of Lansing here was whether the priest has influence over the management of the water.
Yeah, no, I get this is the theory that some of you may or may not know in Oriental despotism. To have a major irrigation system, you have to have a system in the ancient world, always based in religion, of managers. And the managers have to have, among other things, a calendar, a writing system, a measuring system to measure the water, and then there has to be some kind of device. I mean, all this comes out of Mesopotamia for the canal building, but here it's how the water, whatever the source of water is used to fill up things. I mean, I don't know. But the second comment here is, this is of course where Clifford Geertz did some of his most famous and early work.
Yes.
So, but remember, one of the things he did was the puppet theater. Do you remember that?
Unfortunately, not at this time. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, this is a place with kingdoms, no? And one of the things they did in royal authority was they had theater and ritual dramas and so on and so forth. It's an interesting literature, and it's all about maintaining royal control. And that's what you're talking about here, royal control.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I think what we want to do is go next door. This is a good job.
Thank you, guys.